how does a Cambridge-educated theoretical physicist, a guy who spent his days doing multidimensional math on chalkboards,
Yeah.
end up teaching people how to dissolve ancient suffering contracts using their hearts?
Yeah, that is a massive leap. I mean, when you look at those two worlds on paper, they just appear completely irreconcilable.
Right. So I want you to imagine a Venn diagram for a second. On the far left side, you have the absolute bleeding edge of theoretical
We're
physics.
talking advanced string theory, right?
Exactly. Advanced string theory, multidimensional mathematics, mapping subatomic particles, the kind of rigid, peer-reviewed science that requires massive particle accelerators and equations that take up entire walls.
Yeah, very objective, highly quantified stuff.
Totally. And then on the far right side of this diagram, you have ancient, mystical, heart-centered meditative practices.
Which is pretty much the exact opposite.
Right. The kind of esoteric wisdom passed down through millennia, usually involving gurus, ashrams, and very subjective internal spiritual experiences. Well, today we are dropping right into the absolute dead center of that overlap. Welcome to a brand new deep dive.
I am so excited for this one.
Yeah.
Because the scientific method demands objective, repeatable phenomena, right?
Yeah.
While spiritual meditation is inherently subjective, experiential, and, largely unquantifiable by our current instruments.
Which is why our mission today is to decode a philosophy that insists these two worlds aren't just compatible, but that they are actually describing the exact same architecture of reality. We're exploring the quantum heart philosophy of Dr. David Clements.
And the source material for today's deep dive is incredibly dense, but so fascinating.
Oh, it really is. We have a rich stack of sources today. Actual transcripts from Dr. Clements' guided live stream activations, foundational texts that map out his multidimensional framework, and background information on his infinite source creations platform.
And we're really going to focus on the mechanics here, specifically what he calls the infinity point. And we're going to dissect this radical choice to dismantle what he refers to as the suffering contract.
Yeah, because we aren't just exploring some vague philosophical idea today. We are looking at how a theoretical physicist has mapped out a highly practical, step-by-step methodology.
A methodology to access what he argues is the fundamental fabric of the universe.
Exactly. But to understand how wild this framework actually is, we really have to start with the mind that built it. Dr. Clements is, he's not your typical spiritual guide.
Not at all. I mean, his academic pedigree is steeped in the absolute highest levels of hard science.
Right, let's look at his background. He holds a Master of Mathematics, a Master of Advanced Study, and a Doctor of Philosophy.
And he worked as a professional theoretical physicist. He was situated at Cambridge and Oxford universities, which is, that's the big leagues.
The biggest. And his specific, highly specialized field was string theory.
Yeah, and for context, for anyone who might not know, string theory is this theoretical framework in physics that attempts to reconcile quantum mechanics and general relativity.
Which is basically the holy grail of modern physics.
Exactly. It proposes that the fundamental ingredients of the universe aren't tiny dots or point-like particles, but rather these one-dimensional vibrating strings.
And here's the crazy part. A crucial mathematical requirement for string theory to even work is the existence of multiple extra dimensions.
Right, often 10 or 11 dimensions in total.
Which is so hard to wrap your head around.
It is, because most of them are supposedly curled up or compacted so tightly that we just cannot perceive them in our standard three-dimensional reality.
So his day job was literally mapping invisible, multidimensional mathematical structures that govern the entire universe. He was living entirely in the mind, living in the math.
But then, around the year 2000, the sources detail this radical shift in his trajectory.
Yeah, he learned a protocol called remote viewing.
Which is wild for a physicist. For those unfamiliar, remote viewing is essentially a trained practice of seeking impressions about a distant or unseen target using subjective extrasensory perception.
Right, like psychic spying.
Hmm.
It was famously studied by the Stanford Research Institute and the CIA during the Cold War.
Yeah, the Stargate project. And for Dr. Clements, practicing remote viewing completely blew the doors off his rigid scientific paradigm.
The sources indicate that this practice awakened his intuition and his energetic senses in a really profound way.
He shifted from analyzing a sterile mathematical universe to perceiving what he describes as the living conscious nature of quantum reality.
He moved his focal point. from the analytical brain down to the center of the heart.
Which is a huge transition.
I find it incredibly jarring, honestly. It's one thing to say, I'm a physicist who meditates to relieve stress.
Right, plenty of people do that.
But it's another thing entirely to go from equations you can prove on a board to channeling something he explicitly calls source love intelligence.
It is a massive leap.
It feels like a master cartographer deciding that instead of drawing the map of the territory, they're just going to literally become a mountain. How does a hard sciences mind justify abandoning the objective tools of physics for purely subjective feeling?
Well, the texts reframe this. They don't see it as an abandonment of physics at all, but rather as a necessary evolution of the observer.
Okay, unpack that for me.
So, in standard theoretical physics, the scientist is always the observer looking at the system from the outside, right? You build a machine to measure a particle. You write an equation to describe a multidimensional space.
Right, there's always a separation between the scientist and the experiment.
Exactly. But the fundamental tenet of quantum mechanics is that the observer actively influences the observed system. You can't separate them.
Oh, right, the observer effect.
Yes. So what Dr. Clements' framework posits is that human consciousness itself is a multidimensional space. The blackboard is limited by the constraints of the analytical mind and the physical world.
But human consciousness isn't limited.
Exactly. According to this framework, it has no limits. Therefore, to truly explore a 10 or 11-dimensional reality, you just cannot use a 3-dimensional instrument like a particle accelerator.
It's just the wrong tool for the job.
Right. You have to use the most sophisticated, multi-dimensional technology available in the universe.
Which is the human body.
Yes. The physical vessel itself is the instrument.
Which implies something pretty amazing for you listening to this right now. You don't need a PhD in advanced string theory to access the quantum field.
No math required.
None at all. The equipment you need is already built right into your own chest.
The instrument is the human architecture, specifically centered in the heart. But, having the instrument is only step one.
You have to understand the operating manual. You have to know how to turn the engine on.
And this brings us directly to the foundational practice of Dr. Clements' method, which is the breath.
The breath. And I know a lot of listeners might roll their eyes here. We've all been told to take a deep breath when we're stressed.
It sounds so basic.
It does. I've looked at dozens of meditative traditions, and almost all of them impose a very strict discipline protocol on respiration.
Oh, absolutely.
You have box breathing, right, where you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold for 4.
Or you have Vipassana, where you rigidly observe the breath without trying to change it at all.
Yeah, or counting techniques. It is almost always highly structured, and frankly, it often feels like mental work.
Well, many classical traditions use the breath to discipline the mind. The structure is the point. It is a way of forcing the chaotic monkey mind to focus on a single, repetitive task.
But Dr. Clements' approach is fundamentally contrary to that, isn't it?
Completely. The foundational mechanism in his text is what he calls a rhythmic breath. And its defining characteristic is that it must be entirely unique and custom-tailored to the individual practitioner in that specific moment.
The transcripts from his live activations are actually incredibly specific about this lack of specificity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's very open-ended.
He constantly instructs the listener to find their personal sweet spot. If a fast, shallow breath brings you joy in that exact moment, you do that.
And if a slow, deep, sighing breath feels better, you do that instead.
The only metric for success is that the breath must bring a feeling of physical comfort, peace, and relaxation.
And the psychological mechanism behind this unstructured approach is critical. Think about what happens when you impose a strict count. Inhale for 4, hold for 4.
You immediately start judging yourself.
Exactly. You inadvertently introduce performance anxiety into your nervous system. The analytical mind immediately activates to monitor the performance.
Like, am I doing this right? Did I hold it for exactly 4 seconds? Am I failing at meditating?
Right, and that activates the sympathetic nervous system, creating subtle physical tension. By prioritizing joy and physical comfort over a rigid structure, the practitioner bypasses the analytical mind entirely.
You enter a state of absolute non-resistance. It's like you're hacking the vagus nerve. You are creating this biofeedback loop where the physical action of breathing in a way that feels inherently pleasurable sends a continuous, undeniable signal to the brain that the organism is perfectly safe.
And once the nervous system registers total safety, that is when the energetic expansion can actually occur.
The transcripts describe this specific rhythmic breath as acting like a literal sponge for higher dimensional energy.
Right, the physical relaxation is not the end goal. It is merely the required state of the instrument, your body to begin absorbing different frequencies.
Okay, I need to challenge this concept of effortless expansion, though.
Let's hear it.
If the ultimate goal of this framework is to access highly structured, incredibly complex, multidimensional quantum fields, I mean, the kind of stuff that requires decades of mathematical study to even conceptualize, doesn't an unstructured, do whatever feels good breathing technique seem a little completely inadequate?
It does seem counterintuitive.
Right, because in almost every field of human endeavor, less effort means fewer results. How can doing less and relaxing more yield such profound energetic access?
Well, that assumption is deeply rooted in our modern Newtonian paradigm of reality, where we equate intense physical or mental friction with significant output.
Like if you want to move a heavy boulder, you have to exert massive physical force.
Exactly. But if we shift the analogy into the realm of quantum physics and electromagnetism, the rules change entirely. Consider the mechanics of a superconductor.
Okay, a superconductor. That's a material that conducts electricity with zero resistance, right?
Yes. For a normal wire to conduct a massive amount of electrical energy, it requires a lot of force, and it generates a tremendous amount of heat and friction. It gets hot.
Right, like an old light bulb.
But if you take certain materials and cool them down to absolute zero, if you fundamentally remove the kinetic friction and vibration from the atomic structure, the material suddenly becomes a superconductor.
Meaning what, practically?
It means it can carry an almost infinite amount of electrical current with zero effort, zero resistance, and zero energy loss.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see where this is going.
In Dr. Clements' framework, physical and mental rigidity is the friction in your energetic wiring. Trying hard, focusing intensely, and stressing about a breath count creates resistance. It heats up the wire.
So relaxation is the mechanism that cools the system down.
Exactly. When you hit that sweet spot of the rhythmic breath, you are dropping your internal resistance to zero. You become a biological superconductor.
Capable of handling higher dimensional currents that would otherwise completely burn out a stressed nervous system.
Yes, that's exactly the framework.
That reframes the entire concept of meditation for me. Relaxation isn't taking a break from the work. Relaxation is the technology that enables the work.
It's the prerequisite.
So the listener finds their unique rhythmic breath, they drop their resistance, they become the superconductor, or as the text says, the sponge.
And this is where the transcripts begin guiding the practitioner up a very specific dimensional ladder.
Right, the source material outlines dimensions 5D through 8D. Let's dig into the mechanics of these specific states of consciousness, starting with the fifth dimension.
Okay, so the journey inherently builds upon itself. You cannot just force entry into a higher dimension. You have to gradually shift the state of your consciousness to match it.
Like climbing rungs on a ladder.
Exactly. In these texts, 5D, or the fifth dimension, is defined primarily by the act of absorption. It is the initial infusion phase.
The language used in the activations describes 5D as a state where the body, the mind, and the actual physical cells act as a relaxation sponge, soaking up unlimited love-light intelligence.
Which sounds like a very visceral somatic sensation, doesn't it?
It really does. You aren't just sitting there visualizing a bright light. You are physically feeling your body absorb something heavy and real.
Because the baseline of connection must be established in the physical tissue first.
Right. And then once the nervous system has fully absorbed that 5D frequency and stabilized, the meditation guides the listener to expand into the sixth dimension, or 6D.
And the qualitative definition shifts here. 6D is defined by the mechanism of profound softening and synergy.
The transcripts literally command the listener to allow any of your grip to dissolve.
Which is such a great phrase, the grip.
I know, we all have that subconscious grip, right? So if 5D is taking the energy in, 6D is the process of that energy actively dismantling the internal tension you didn't even know you were holding.
The energy penetrates much deeper into the subconscious architecture.
Yeah.
Then the progression moves to the seventh dimension, 7D.
And here, the definitions shift away from a physical somatic feeling entirely. They describe a profound shift in identity and placement.
Right. 7D is defined in the text as a fluid ocean of unity.
A fluid ocean. The texts note that within the 7D frequency, the illusion of separation ceases to exist. You are melting into the all that is.
You lose the boundaries of the self.
And then finally, it culminates in the eighth dimension, 8D. This is where the energy becomes hyperactive and outward-facing. 8D is defined by the embodiment of pure kindness, compassion, and playfulness.
Playfulness is a key word there. It's described as the ecstatic joy of existence itself.
The progression of these states is highly methodical, moving from the physical body to the psychological grip to the universal expanse.
It really is.
Let's ground this progression in a physical analogy so a listener can actually conceptualize how their consciousness is shifting, because it gets a bit abstract.
Yeah, metaphors help a lot here.
Instead of thinking of dimensions as literal places you travel to in a spaceship, let's look at the mechanism of phase changes in matter. Think about the states of water.
Oh, applying a thermodynamic analogy to states of consciousness. I like that. Let's trace it.
Okay, so your normal, stressed, waking state, the 3D world, is ice. You are solid, you are rigid, defined by strict boundaries, and you easily fracture under pressure.
Very brittle.
Right. Now, when you start that rhythmic breath and enter 5D, you are an ice cube sitting in the sun. You are acting as a sponge for the heat, absorbing the light.
But the structure hasn't fundamentally changed yet.
Exactly, but the energy is infusing you. Then you shift to 6D. The ice actually begins to melt. This is the softening and synergy phase. The rigid grip of the ice structure dissolves, and you turn into liquid water.
You are still you, but you have lost your hard edges. You're adaptable now.
Right. Now, the transition from 6D to 7D in this metaphor would be what?
That would be the water droplet falling into the sea.
Yes. In 7D, the droplet hits the ocean. You are now that fluid ocean of unity. The boundaries between the self and the rest of the universe are entirely permeable.
You just cannot distinguish this single droplet from the vast sea anymore.
And then 8D. The sun continues to heat the ocean, and the water evaporates into vapor or steam.
It becomes expansive.
Atmospheric, omnipresent, it has no container at all, it just radiates outward in all directions, which aligns perfectly with 8D being defined as pure kindness, compassion, and the ecstatic joy that permeates everything.
That maps the mechanics of the shift perfectly, actually. You are not traveling anywhere at all. You are fundamentally altering the structural density of your own consciousness.
You are melting the rigidity of the separated ego to allow for universal expansion.
But this expansion doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It requires a physical anchor within the human body to actually function.
Right, and this is where the material gets incredibly intricate. The sources introduce a highly specific anatomical architecture that acts as the control center for this entire multidimensional process.
We need to talk about the Sacred Heart and the infinity point.
Yes. This specific architecture is where Dr. Clements' theoretical physics background creates a truly unique spiritual framework.
Because the texts are absolutely adamant about distinguishing the Sacred Heart from other concepts you might be familiar with.
It is not the biological physical muscle pumping blood in your chest.
No, and it's also not simply the traditional heart chakra found in Vedic energy systems.
The sources define the Sacred Heart as a living, intelligent field system that exists at the core of the soul's architecture.
And nested at the absolute microscopic center of this Sacred Heart field is what he calls the infinity point.
The infinity point. This is the crux of the entire methodology.
It really is. The infinity point is defined as the direct personal gateway, a literal bridge to infinite source love intelligence, or what he calls the creator field.
And the language used here, an infinity point that just screams physics to me. It sounds exactly like the definition of a singularity.
The parallel is impossible to miss.
Right. In astrophysics, a singularity is a point in space-time where mass is compressed to infinite density, like the center of a black hole, where the normal laws of physics just completely break down.
And Dr. Clements is conceptually placing a singularity of infinite consciousness directly inside the human energy field.
That is wild. A singularity acting as a portal where our observable universe intersects with something entirely beyond our current physical models.
If we view consciousness as a multidimensional fabric, the infinity point acts as a literal quantum wormhole.
A localized microscopic coordinate within the individual that provides direct access to the macroscopic infinite source.
And the bulk of the meditation transcripts actually involves the active, conscious mechanics of clearing the pathways around this point.
Because you don't just, open the infinity point and blast off into deep space.
No, you'd get lost. The transcripts guide the practitioner to build a very deliberate energetic bridge. You open the infinity point, and then you purposefully channel that infinite energy out into the energetic heart chakra.
And then down into the physical tissue of the biological heart.
Exactly. And even up a central energetic column directly into the pineal gland in the center of the brain.
And the directional flow of this energy is a major differentiator in this work, I think. A vast majority of esoteric traditions focus on an upward trajectory,
Ascending out of the physical body.
right? Transcending the heavy biological form to reach enlightenment in some higher realm. But Dr. Clements' framework reverses this flow entirely.
The objective is to draw that 8D infinite cosmic energy down into the biological reality.
You are not escaping the physical form, you are terraforming it.
Terraforming the body. I love that. The transcripts literally instruct the listener to speak to their physical selves.
You are supposed to ask your cells to invite this infinite love light in, and to remind the cells that they are fractal extensions of this love.
The use of the word fractal there is highly significant.
Let's break that down. In mathematics, a fractal is a complex pattern where each part has the exact same statistical character as the whole.
Right. It is a pattern that repeats itself infinitely across different scales.
Like a fern leaf is a classic biological fractal, right? Each small frond looks exactly like the entire leaf.
Perfect example. So by defining human cells as fractal extensions of infinite source intelligence, the philosophy is asserting that the divine is not an external force to be reached.
It's not something out there.
No, it is the fundamental structural building block of your own physical biology.
Yeah.
You are made of the very infinite space you're trying to access.
Which means the deep dive into meditation is simply a process of cellular memory. You are just reminding the biology of what it is structurally made of.
It's remembering, not discovering.
I find this to be an incredibly empowering concept. You, listening to this, you don't have to seek out an external authority.
You don't need a guru to grant you access.
You don't need a temple, a specific geography, or a massive machine. You possess a built-in singularity. You have the ultimate cosmic authority residing right within your own chest.
It centers absolute sovereignty within the individual.
But, and this is a massive but, establishing that the human being is a fractal of infinite joy and love immediately presents a massive philosophical and experiential paradox.
Oh, definitely. And the texts do not shy away from this paradox at all.
Yeah.
They tackle it directly.
It's the biggest elephant in the room. If every single human being walking the earth has a built-in gateway to infinite source love, infinite compassion, and 8D joy, why is the actual human experience on this planet so deeply characterized by trauma, pain, struggle, and lack?
Right. If the underlying biological and spiritual architecture is designed to conduct infinite joy, why does the machinery seem to be malfunctioning on a global scale? Dr. Clements addresses this by introducing a concept that radically challenges our conventional understanding of human hardship. He outlines the mechanics of what he calls the suffering contract.
And this is where the material requires very careful examination because it completely reframes human trauma.
It's a huge paradigm shift.
The sources describe our current global reality, the history of human conflict and pain, as an old paradigm of lack and suffering that has been artificially held in place for many cycles of time.
The texts refer to this paradigm as an ancient template, or, crucially, an agreement to forget.
An agreement. So the foundational premise is that humanity, operating at a collective soul level, entered into a binding contract of suffering. We basically agreed to experience the illusion of complete separation from the source intelligence.
The stated purpose being intense learning and spiritual development.
So we essentially agreed to play a video game on the absolute hardest difficulty setting with the screen turned off just to see if we could remember how to turn the lights back on.
That's one way to look at it. But the transcripts reveal a layer to this that is much darker and more mechanical than just a learning exercise.
Yeah, they explicitly discuss the existence of harvesting grids.
This is a highly provocative and complex component of his multidimensional mapping. The sources state that within the collective energetic field of the planet, certain structural grids were created.
And what do these grids do?
The function of these grids is to both encourage the generation of fear, lack, and suffering, and to actively harvest that dense emotional energy for use in ongoing higher dimensional conflict.
Okay, I'm going to push back incredibly hard on this concept. Let's look at this practically. We are talking about human beings experiencing profound real-world trauma, poverty, war, grief.
Very real, visceral pain.
If these invisible harvesting grids exist, and humanity has been unknowingly trapped in a matrix designed to extract our pain like batteries powering a machine, that inherently makes us victims.
It sounds incredibly disempowering at first glance.
It completely strips away our agency. How does a framework that just spent an hour telling us we have ultimate sovereignty and an infinity point in our chest suddenly reconcile that with the idea that we are energetic livestock being farmed by a grid?
The friction you are pointing out is the exact crux of the issue. A contract you do not remember signing feels like a massive violation.
Absolutely.
However, the reconciliation within this specific philosophy hinges on the fundamental difference between the perspective of the localized human ego and the perspective of the multidimensional soul.
Okay, lay that out for me.
Sources emphasize heavily that this is an agreement. The soul chose the restriction of the 3D grid to catalyze evolution.
But the human ego suffering right now didn't choose it.
Right, and the ego experiences it as victimhood because the ego's perception is limited to the single lifetime. It can't see the big picture.
It just feels the pain.
But within the logic of this framework, if you define yourself as a victim of a harvesting grid, you are immediately giving your power to the grid. You solidify your position as a subordinate battery.
Because victims are powerless.
Exactly. If, however, you accept the premise that your higher consciousness made an agreement to experience this limitation, you completely shift the power dynamic. A victim is powerless against their oppressor. But an entity that made an agreement, even a terrible one that they have currently forgotten, retains the ultimate inherent right to void that agreement.
Oh, wow.
True sovereignty is not the absence of the grid. Sovereignty is realized in the exact moment you consciously choose to revoke the contract.
The psychological shift there is actually profound. You aren't fighting the grid. You aren't going to war with the trauma.
No, because engaging in a fight against a grid designed to harvest conflict energy would only generate more of the exact frequency it consumes.
You would literally be feeding the machine by fighting it.
You power it up.
So the transcripts outline a very specific mechanism for this instead. The critical step in the meditation isn't to battle the old paradigm.
Not at all.
You are instructed to take all of your localized pain, lack, fear, and suffering, and consciously offer it up to your higher self for complete dissolution.
You don't fight the connection. You simply unplug the cord.
You dissolve your energetic resonance with the old template. By utilizing the rhythmic breath to access the 5D through 8D frequencies, you raise your internal vibration to a point where the low-frequency suffering contract can no longer physically anchor in your cellular structure.
You literally become incompatible with the grid.
You're basically saying to the universe, I have extracted the necessary evolutionary lessons from the illusion of separation. The curriculum of suffering is no longer required for my development.
I'm dropping the class.
Exactly. And by opening that infinity point, you flush the old neurological and energetic pathways with this new high-density love light. Suffering is no longer viewed as an inescapable human condition, nor is it a punishment from a judgmental external universe.
It is just an outdated contract.
And because you listening are a fractal extension of the infinite, you have the executive authority to tear that contract up.
It is a radical mechanism for reclaiming agency. But dissolving the old contract creates a massive energetic vacuum.
Right, nature abhors a vacuum.
Exactly. When you unplug a biological superconductor from a grid of suffering, the system requires a new current. The journey mapped out in these texts does not end with the practitioners simply sitting in a peaceful, empty void.
It culminates in a massive sequence of cosmic grounding.
The ultimate goal of this work is not escapism. It isn't about meditating yourself into a blissful 8D bubble, ignoring the reality of the planet and floating away.
No, the climax of the meditation is about bringing this new paradigm crashing down into the physical reality of Earth. The guided visualizations that facilitate this are staggering in their scale.
The process of anchoring this new reality involves journeying to the two most massive gravitational and energetic bodies in our immediate vicinity.
The Earth and the Sun.
Yes. The text describes the practitioner being placed into an energetic cocoon facilitated by what are termed supportive love light teams, which include references to Arcturian and Pleiadian energies.
So, protected in this cocoon, the practitioner's consciousness journeys down through the crust of the planet, deep into the magma, all the way to the very core of Mother Earth, referred to as Gaia.
And upon reaching the core, the text describes witnessing a starlight ignition.
A starlight ignition.
It is characterized as a powerful, newly birthed wave of energy emitting directly from the center of the planet. The instruction is for the practitioner to synergize and entrain their own nervous system with this new, higher-level planetary resonance.
We can actually look at this through the lens of electromagnetic resonance. The Earth actually has a measurable heartbeat, right? The Schumann resonance.
Yes, which is the frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere.
The meditation is essentially guiding the practitioner to manually sync the electromagnetic field of their own heart, their infinity point, with the deep shifting frequencies of the planetary core. You are physically plugging into a new power source.
And once that resonance is established with the Earth, the sequence shifts upward. A new cocoon is formed, and the practitioner's consciousness is projected outward into the solar system, directly into the sun, referred to as soul.
And the language here is intense. You journey into the solar core to experience the flames of birth and to consciously connect with the intergalactic energies that are described as flowing through the sun.
You are bathing your energetic architecture in solar frequencies.
But the mechanism here is vital to understand. You are not journeying to the Earth's core or the sun's core simply to be a tourist.
No, and you are not just absorbing these massive energies for your own personal healing either.
The ultimate demand of the protocol is activation. You journey to these cosmic bodies to be activated as an emitter.
The transcripts ask the listener a very direct question. Do you wish to be a surface walker?
A surface walker. Having successfully cleared your own suffering contract and having opened the infinity point to the 8D frequencies, your function completely changes. You are no longer just a sponge.
You are asked to hold the resonance of this starlight ignition, this new paradigm of thriving living, abundance, and profound peace, and actively radiate it out to the surface population.
You flip the switch from receiving to transmitting. You become a cosmic relay station. Just think about the sheer scale of the mechanics we've mapped out today.
It's breathtaking.
The listener starts by just sitting in a chair, trying to find a comfortable, unstructured way to breathe, just looking for the sweet spot to relax their vagus nerve. And through this sequential unlocking of dimensional densities, they end up acting as a literal living energetic bridge between the core of the Earth, the blazing plasma heart of the sun, and the collective consciousness of the human race.
You transition from being an unknowing battery, harvested by a grid of lack, to being an active, sovereign emitter generating a grid of thriving life.
And to assist practitioners in holding and emitting this massive frequency in their daily lives, the sources briefly outline an innovation called the Quantum Stillness Clarifier, or QSC.
Right, the QSC.
What is the actual mechanism of the QSC? How does it function outside of the active meditation?
The QSC is described as an advanced living energetic device that Dr. Clements downloaded and developed. While the exact physical or energetic schematics are obviously complex, its functional purpose is to generate a powerful, localized quantum still point within your physical environment.
Okay, how does that work practically?
It acts similarly to a bioenergetic tuning fork. Just as a tuning fork will cause other objects in a room to vibrate at its exact frequency, the QSC is designed to entrain the electromagnetic field of your living room or your workspace to match the frequency of the infinity point.
Creating a stable bridge to the source field even when you are not actively meditating.
Exactly. It provides a localized anchor for the 8D frequency. It takes the burden off the practitioner to constantly hold the field manually all day long.
Okay, let's take a deep rhythmic breath ourselves, no counting, just whatever feels comfortable, and review the massive architecture we have just unpacked.
We covered a lot of ground today. We started by analyzing the unique perspective of Dr. David Clements, a theoretical physicist who recognized that the mathematical models of string theory were ultimately pointing toward human consciousness.
He shifted his instrument of observation from the blackboard to the multidimensional space of the human heart.
We broke down the mechanics of the engine, the unique rhythmic breath. We explored how abandoning rigid breathing protocols bypasses the analytical mind's resistance,
Turning the physical body into a relaxed biological superconductor capable of absorbing quantum frequencies.
We mapped the phase changes of the dimensional ladder. 5D acts as the ice absorbing the heat, a physical sponge for light.
6D is the melting process, dismantling internal tensions.
7D is the fluid ocean where the illusion of separation dissolves.
And 8D is the evaporation into the omnipresent vapor of ecstatic compassion and joy.
We located the physical anchor for this expansion. The infinity point, a quantum singularity of source intelligence housed deep within the sacred heart.
We discussed the empowering mechanics of building a bridge from this singularity directly into the physical cells, reminding our biology that it is a fractal extension of the infinite.
We engaged with the difficult paradox of human trauma, exploring the concept of the suffering contract and the harvesting grids.
We identified the psychological mechanism of true sovereignty, the realization that because you made the ancient agreement to experience limitation, you hold the ultimate authority to consciously void that contract and unplug from the grid.
And finally, we tracked the massive sequence of cosmic co-creation, journeying to the core of the Earth for the starlight ignition and into the sun for the flames of birth.
transforming the practitioner into a surface walker and active emitter, broadcasting the new paradigm of thriving living to the entire planet.
When you distill all of these complex multidimensional mechanics and theoretical frameworks down to their absolute essence, the central takeaway is a profound, undeniable declaration of your immense inherent value.
The human being is not a broken biological machine in need of constant fixing or discipline.
You are a fractal extension of pure, infinite love intelligence who simply agreed to experience the restriction of forgetting for a brief period of time.
You hold the absolute executive authority over your own consciousness. You have the remote control. You can void the contract of suffering the moment you are fully ready to drop your resistance.
It is a philosophy that offers total personal empowerment, structured with the meticulous logic of a physicist and the profound compassion of a mystic.
As we close out this deep dive into the quantum heart, I want to leave you with one final, mind-bending concept to mull over on your own time. It builds on the mechanics of everything we've explored today.
Oh, a parting thought to anchor the material. I love these.
Precisely. We discussed the concept of fractals, the idea that the pattern of the whole is perfectly repeated in the smallest part.
Right, the fern leaf.
Exactly. If the universe is truly fractal, exactly as Dr. Clements' background in advanced physics suggests, a pattern infinitely repeating at every single microscopic and macroscopic scale, then the vast, unimaginable physical distances between the stars, the distant galaxies, the iron core of the Earth, and the blazing plasma surface of the sun.
Those distances might not actually be out there at all.
The macrocosm is entirely contained within the microcosm. What if the entire physical and energetic cosmos, with all of its 11 dimensions, all of its historical harvesting grids, its starlight ignitions, and its solar flares, is actually neatly mathematically folded up inside the singularity of your own sacred heart? The next time you take a deep, unstructured, joyful breath, consider exactly what universe you are inflating.